Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Shop Stool podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. This is episode number 32. My name is Robin Lewis from robinlewismakes.com. I'm joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks.
Hello.
And John Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio.
Hello.
We live stream the recording on YouTube every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, or UTC plus 10, or you can watch or listen to it later on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. We'll get to your comments and questions towards the end of the show, but please feel free to chat amongst yourselves, the idea being that this is also a place for people to meet. So, what have we been... Well, actually, before we do that, I just want to say welcome back to Joey. He wasn't here last week, so it's good to have you back on the show.
Juggling pregnant wife and 3-year-old.
Oh, you shouldn't juggle pregnant women.
No, tell you what.
It's not in the Australian guidelines, is it? So it's good to have you back on the show. We worked through last week, but there was a distinct lack of content from number 3. So, yeah, and we've got a question that needs answering tonight that was specifically asked
right
for you, but we'll get to that later. So, Jordan, what have you been working on this week?
My goodness. This week I am... There comes you're spread thin because you're trying to do so many things, and then there is spread to within a micron, and that's where I'm at right now.
Because last week you were saying it was a bit touch and go.
Yeah, so last week was, one project on the go, and that was it. And this week I have been doing... Honestly, I couldn't even list everything I've been looking into, but yeah, 24 hours a day, I've got 10 things on my mind because it's just that time of year where it's, end of tax, trying to get finances sorted for that. And then I've got 5 people came into me looking for quotes, which is great because I was completely quiet, but, they're nothing major. They're just wall mount cabinet and all this sort of boring stuff, which is easy to do, and I can batch out, no worries. And while all that was happening, I was also in a rush to get my laser cutter imported because while I arranged for them to do the cost, insurance, and freight style of freighting, they did not do CIF freighting as I requested. They did it just on the cheapest scale. So,
sorry, what freighting? CIF?
Yeah, so the sender takes care of everything from cost of the getting it onto the boat, cost of the actual freight, the insurance for it, and all of that. But they did that, but they did it in the cheapest way. So the laser was landing on Friday last week. I got notified of this, and I didn't realize I was going to have to do the customs clearance and declaration. I had to approach the freight forwarder over this matter. And then,
that's annoying,
and it was
difficult because you're like, who the heck do you call?
Yeah, and I had to ask my supplier of the laser who their freight forwarder is because the phone number on the letterhead wasn't working. Turns out I was ringing the fax number, but that's not the point. But it was like a frantic rush to get this thing cleared. Because if you don't pick it up within 3 days, you get charged $150 a day in storage.
Yes.
So it's been a quiet couple of weeks. So I have very little money on my person, and it was another $2,700 to get it imported, which I had to come up with, which was
GST, was it?
GST duty, and also the freight forwarders, whatever. So that was a huge rush. All while that's going on, I'm also trying to get this new plan, which is still hush underway, which is, doing the new website, getting the finances, insurances, getting all of that sort of stuff ironed out while trying to build a dining table, a bench seat, 2 stools, and remember to get back to people with quotes.
Sounds like you're running a business by yourself.
Yeah, it's just been like, why couldn't this be spread out over that 2-week quiet period of nothing? Why did it all have to come in at once?
Is this something that you can get some help with, like from someone you know, or does it have to be done by Jordan?
The thing is, yes, it could totally be done by someone I know, but everyone I know that would I would A, trust, or B, be willing to ask, have full-time jobs of themselves. And it's kind of a bad move. And oh dear, my air compressor's on. A bad move to approach them to say, hey, I'm in a real rush. Can you take care of all of this, throw it at them, and run the opposite direction while I'm doing something else?
Yeah, I was just thinking from like a consulting perspective. Like, just come on, I can give you a week's work. Would you be interested?
Oh yeah, I mean, if I had the finances to do it, I would totally do that. But right now, I'm just pretty scant. Is that even a word? But pretty thin on cash. Skint is the word I was looking for.
Skint.
So yeah, I mean, it would be lovely too.
The money that's coming in isn't enough to justify getting the that's what I'm saying. Like the extra money coming in, not enough to justify.
The money that's coming in right now is barely enough to keep me just paying costs.
Right. Okay.
It's just enough. So yeah, can't really afford an extra expense.
I hear it quite often. What you were bringing up, Robin, is that you hear it a lot from these business coach type people that if you're finding it yourself too stressed, you bring someone else in to take care of those jobs that you don't have time for. And that's a really good idea, apart from they never say how you're meant to pay for that person when otherwise you would have done it.
Yeah.
People aren't that stupid that they're just going to continue being stressed when they know that you can pay someone to help you out. The problem is getting that stream of capital up front to actually be in a position where you can you could hire someone for 2 weeks or a month.
Yeah, the money that's the extra volume of work that's putting you under stress would need to equate to extra capital that you could put into that. But I guess
until you get that work coming in and a deposit and a queue of clients, and you've got the capital sitting there from, say, deposits, that's when you can say, right now I can afford to have someone come in theory. But it's like chicken or the egg massively.
And the thing with my situation is that the work that is taking all of my time isn't work that's generating income. It's not for a paying client. It's for getting ready for a paying client, hopefully. So it's just like it's literally throwing money at something which isn't to have any end gain, or at least no short term anyway. Hopefully long term. But it's been a fun week. It's been one of those weeks where you just say, why did I even start this?
Sorry, maybe a stupid question then. So that big box on the back of the truck, that was the laser?
That was the laser, yeah.
Okay, right.
And there is a story to go with that. But
how did you get it off?
Oh, I used my forklift. That wasn't an issue.
You've got a forklift, that's right. I forgot.
Yeah. But the laser is, it's the correct size, but they sent me this video when it was finished being built in China. And it was a white machine as I ordered. It's red. And then when I opened it up, I looked at the tube that's in there, and I thought to myself, that looks way too small to be 100 watt, 130 watt, and it's 80 watts. And I sent an email just saying, hey, this, how can we fix this? No, that is the correct tube. No, on my quote, I have a Recce 130 watt tube. And what you've supplied is not even a Recce. It's a different brand for one. And it's also 80 watts. Oh, but in China, we call it this. I'm like, no, my pro forma invoice is essentially our contract between the two companies. You have not delivered what is on this contract. I put a photo of the tube that was here and the actual invoice printout. This is not what's on there. I'm trying to be reasonable about this and not jump to conclusions and just say that, hey, you probably had 2 freights go out on the same day of similar spec and I got the wrong one. Someone got my upgrade. Now you just need to send me the tube. No hard feelings. I can use it until the new tube arrives.
Do you not have a picture of? You said you saw a picture of the white or the video.
Yeah, I've got the video still. Yeah, and I've got
Can't you send them that back? And
I have.
Right. And they're still saying...
You should see this email chain that they're trying to convince me. It says, even if you did get a 130 watt machine, it doesn't mean it's 100 watts. And I just replied, I know how laser tubes work. I've been laser cutting for years. I realized that the usable power rating of this tube would be 100 watts, and that's why we upgraded. But you haven't even sent me the standard level. You've sent me a downgraded level. God, they're just being real difficult. Classic Chinese suppliers that don't want to admit they're wrong when the color is
And
quite a giveaway.
You're in China. They're like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, there's like very little I can do, and I got it at such a good price that I can't complain too heavily. But
What's a tube worth?
probably $600-700.
Right.
And the difference between the 80 and the 100, is it pretty substantial?
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Like in terms of performance.
Yeah, so this is an 80 watt. My old one was 60 watt, and I can't even cut at the same speed. Admittedly, I haven't aligned everything yet. It's just as it came. So once that's done, I'm sure it will be better. But I should be cutting at 30 millimeters a second, and this I can't cut anything less than 12 millimeters a second right now. So there's a very slim chance that I'll even be able to cut the 9 millimeter plywood that I need to, which I bought this laser for, when the 100 watt would do it like it's butter. So,
and you can buy the 100 watt laser here in Australia and replace it?
no. Well, yeah,
Tube.
I can get the tube.
Well, sorry, yeah, I just mean the tube, yeah, not the whole.
I can, but the issue is that it's not just getting the replacement tube; it's also getting the power supply to go with it, because it is plug and play. But I have to buy a 100 watt tube, and then I'd have to buy the 100 watts power supply, wait for it to get here, and then any time that's lost there, like this should be generating the income from day one.
Yeah.
And now I can't, because it's not actually up to the task that it's purchased for. And
I mean, that sucks.
they're not going to give a crap. They don't care if I'm losing money. They've got my money now. So
Yeah.
it's just, we'll see. Hopefully they do the right thing.
It's interesting. So I think we talked about this previously. Colin Black Byron, he's also a YouTube maker. He got a jointer, maybe from China. It was either jointer or thicknesser. And he said the amount of conversation back and forth to make this happen, he said that was the most nerve-wracking part is that conversation of you don't know what's going on over there. And I guess this is the unfortunate, possibility.
Yeah. And I mean, their approach is saying that it's the same when it's not the same. So we'll see what happens. I mean, my sister has her company manufactures a lot in the same city as them, so maybe one of her contacts can actually go to their factory and just say, hey, what's up, I'm representing this. But the thing is, the deed is done, so there's very little
chance. You can return it.
It's just me, hopefully me being calm, level and collected will be enough for them to say, yep, we did mess up, sorry, we'll replace the part.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they can just replace the part, not the entire laser. So that's a potential. That's an out for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And they said who was the supplier, and it's Robotech CNC. Stay away. At this stage, stay away. Next week, I might say they're great.
Cool. Oh, that's a bit of a heavy week. Was there anything else that's like good that's come out of the week?
This
sounds like it's stressful and broken lasers.
Yeah, this week's not been a great one for like wins. I'm still working on the same project as last week because it's just taking forever with resin and just annoying curing times. So still working on that, but no, it's fine. It's been a good week, just a busy one. What about you, Robin?
Well, I've had a very productive week.
I saw.
Yeah, I've finally got the weatherboards out of my workshop and up onto my workshop wall, which was really exciting. It was a very overly complicated project because of the way I was doing it. So for those of you who haven't installed weatherboards before, you generally start at the bottom. You put the bottom board on, you put the next board on, and then they go up in sequence pretty easily in terms of lining them up and all of that. But because the top of my house is weatherboards and I was working down, I ended up having to screw everything in place so that I could screw the board in, then get the next board lined up and cut and ready, then unscrew the previous board, slide the board underneath, screw that off, screw off the one above it, and then repeat the process. So
that is a way to do it. Yeah.
So it ended up taking I did it in chunks, but in terms of full day, it was probably about 3 full days worth of, and it was a 7 by 2.5 meter square area.
It wasn't massive.
So if you were doing it in the traditional way, you probably would have finished a whole house in a day and a half.
Exactly.
To do a tiny section, it took you 3 times as long.
Which was
gonna be fun.
It was, but at the end of the day, it was working. You know what I mean? It wasn't. I wasn't. Yeah.
What you can do in that situation is story rod your tops or bottoms, work out your spacings, start at the bottom, and then just slide the last one in under and over.
Yeah, that would have worked really well, actually, because
it's a bit fudgy. But other than that, you just do it normally and work your way up.
Oh no, the last one would have been simple because you would have just slid it under the that would have actually worked really well because, and these are all those things that you don't. You sort of work them out as you go, and then on the last board, you're like, "Oh, this is so easy," but now the job's done.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they're 170 high weather boards with a 30 mil
overhang or overlap.
So putting together a storyboard for that would have been simple.
Yeah. So if you have any more like that to do on the house, maybe work your way, do it that way. It might help.
So that's all in. I finished. So as I put it up, I was just putting in screws here and there just to get it up. Just before the podcast, I finished putting in all the screws. A lot of people said to me, "Oh, you should be doing nails. That's going to be quicker," but I couldn't. And at the end of the day, because they are pine weatherboards, I'm happier putting in screws. Hopefully they'll last a bit better. What else? Oh, and then other than that, I've spent a lot of this week just by chance. Because now I'm cleaning out my workshop, I've been sharpening all of my tools, like my chisels and my plane. It's one of those things where I get bored and then I'm like, oh, let me go sharpen the tools. So all my tools are super sharp, ready to go for when I can actually start working again. And I took your advice, Jordan, and I got rid of my high-speed steel thicknesser cutter heads and replaced them for the carbide.
And you're liking it?
I've run one board through, which actually slightly bogged down, but then to be fair, it's the width of my thicknesser, and it's a ridiculously heavy hardwood, so can't really fault a cheapo machine like that.
Even my machine bogs down if I go full width, and that's got a 15 horsepower motor on it. So
yes, I'm not too worried. The cutters, it's amazing. But I guess it's going to come down to the longevity, how long they hold that edge. Because I've had this unit now for about a year, and I've gone through, and I've just pulled out the original cutter heads. So they've been rotated once.
Right.
So if I can stay on these for a year before I rotate them, then I'll be happy.
That's a long time.
I think for someone like you, Joe, of course.
I think you'll be fine because, my cutter head, that must be coming up on a year, if not more, on mine. And that's used every day with the hardwoods. Still on the first edge, still as sharp as the first day I got.
That's the spiral bit, yeah.
The spiral, yeah.
But, I mean, to be fair, from what I've heard, I think it was Frank Howarth, he hasn't rotated his in 3 years or something. A lot of people find that you just don't need to almost ever, unless you hit something, rotate those knives. Would
it come down to the depth of your cut as well, or is that not really an issue because the wood's the wood?
I mean, there's less strain on your tool because it's a shearing cut and it's also taking shorter chips. So maybe it would also could be heat build up, like less heat build up.
There'll be less hot, yeah.
But I mean, the thing with carbide is that it's not as sharp as high speed steel, but it doesn't lose its edge very easily unless you chip it. So that's why I use carbide on metal blades. Now it's just way easier and lasts way longer.
While we're talking about it, so my machine's got 26 cutter heads, and to purchase the heads, you buy them in boxes of 10.
Yeah.
Would you ever change some of them and not the others? Or would you, because in my mind, it doesn't make sense. You're either going to change them all or you're not going to change them.
Carbide likes to crack and shatter. So generally the only time I would change one out completely is if it's hit something hard and it's actually cracked the carbide and it's crumbled off.
So that can happen. Okay.
Oh yeah, it can happen. But the worst thing that's going to happen, you have a head. I'd assume you would have 4 rows minimum, maybe 3 rows minimum, like of that segmented head on your cutter head.
What, like, sorry, how many faces on the head?
Yeah. So if you lined them all up and imagined that all of your segmented knives were one continuous knife, how many knives would you have on a cutter block? It'd be at least 3.
Yeah, I don't know. There's 6 faces, and there's it's 4 or 5 across.
Yeah, so like even if you have a few inserts which are duller than the other, the overlap of the next face is going to take care of the dull finish that you're receiving off that one tiny centimeter square block.
And that's why I thought maybe there's a case for doing 10, only replacing 10, because you can get away with doing that. It's the same as if you've got 2 batteries, you can just replace the one and it's gonna go for 50% of the time, but it still goes. So maybe people do only replace 10 at a time.
It's probably just a sales thing.
Yeah,
I couldn't understand.
They make way more money if they sell 10 than batches of 30.
Yeah, because now, it's 26 heads, and now I'm left with 4 heads, which when I've replaced them 4 times, however many, I will then have another set. It just
all I'll
crazy.
say, Robin, is you're 26. How many? Sorry, 36. 34.
26.
I've got 220 on mine.
Yes.
They cost $6 a piece.
Yeah, well, this is I bought them from Hafco. They were $90 for 10.
Yeah, so $10 a piece there. But yeah, it's gonna be expensive when it comes time for me to replace all of my knives.
No wonder they're still going. Yeah, cool. All right, well that's been pretty much me. Joey, what's up with you?
I've been doing a little bit of cabinet work. Anyone's looked at my Instagram, you see I'm doing some MDF panel doors. I've been working on these awesome wooden bowls, all on the CNC at the moment. They've just prototyped some up for a company. They're wanting to put some kind of cosmetic in these bowls, some new startup kind of high-end, all organic, cosmetic company. And they're looking like 300 or 400 of these bowls. So we've just been trying to sort out the details of how we can mass produce these things. They're pretty cool. They have a wooden thread. We managed to cut a male and female thread on the CNC.
I saw that on Instagram.
Are you using Fusion for that, or is it?
No, it's definitely not Fusion. I am not the brains behind the operation as far as the CNC goes. My father-in-law does all that and just works it out some magical way. By the end of the day, we've got a thing. Yeah. I just kind of say, we need to make this. Can we do it? Yep. Right. Let's go for it. So that's a cool thing. So the other thing that you may have seen, and I probably talked about it 2 weeks ago when I was on last, was this loft bed that I was making. And if you are not familiar, there's a couple of pictures on Instagram. So it's a loft bed with big turned posts and a kind of floating staircase for a little girl's bedroom. So I went and installed that last Thursday. So, and I'm going to probably sound a little bit repetitive. I think I've been down this complaining route before.
I was just looking at our tough clients episode today for some reason.
Yeah, but I'm going to talk about another tough client. And annoyingly, this is just what happens when you deal with lots of people. Most of the time, they're nice. This time, not so cool.
What happened?
So made the bed, loved it, and installed it. Everything went pretty good. Client was a little bit iffy when I left, just wasn't giving off that stupendous vibe that you get when they really like what you've delivered. So the next day, I get an email with some photos saying, look, I think the finish isn't great, and here's some pictures. And I had actually legitimately forgotten about a couple of things. I didn't cover a screw head up. There was a couple of screw heads. There was a gap that hadn't been caulked, and a little bit of paint touch up, which I'd forgotten to do. So pretty much just forgot to do a once over before I left. But then she went on, and the email just continued and continued. So why is the gap between the stairs and the bed so big? How come my daughter's existing desk doesn't fit under the stairs? And how come I can see a bolt holding it onto the wall?
Now, are these things that had been discussed, or just...
That's the next thing, is that all of these points, I've got a massive email chain of discussion about me bringing these things up, saying, now, if we make the bed central of the window, which is under, you're going to have this large gap between the stairs and the bed. I'll have to make a wee bridge. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Now, that's dangerous. So,
yeah.
And
you've obviously shown her this, and she said...
Well, and so what her other complaint was that the stairs seem to just stop at an illogical place. And I was kind of like, where is a logical place? They stop at the top at the bed. Where else? But besides that, she's seen drawings of it.
She's signed off on it. Yeah, exactly. If it's illogical, well, there's only one person to blame.
So I actually wrote back this email like straight away and cut and pasted segments of our big email thread into the new email and said, this is your responses to all these things last month when we talked about it. And didn't hear anything all week until about an hour ago. I got an email from her.
Sorry, just to stop you there. So you installed this. She
Yeah.
emailed you the next day with all of these
So
issues.
that was last Friday, yeah.
Last Friday. Okay, so it's been a week. Okay, yeah. So I'm just getting my timeline right. Yep.
Yeah. So it's been exactly a week. So it just annoyed me that we do everything we can to like make these things work, and you can give as much guidance as you can, but it just doesn't isn't received at the other end. It's like the whole reason I'm emailing you this is because I need you to understand that you've got a fork in the road. Go left or right. Each one's got pros and cons. Which way you're going to go, and understand the consequences to each decision. Nothing is magic.
And if you don't understand, that's fine. Let's nut it out before we move on. Yeah.
It's just like I was trying to work out what all week has been bugging me, and I was trying to work out what it is that, like, trying to get it down to like a single point of what is it that is annoying me about the situation. And I think it is that, we are asked as makers of things, we are constantly having to make these decisions versus, does piece of wood A go on top of piece of wood B or behind? Do we want to see a screw head or do we want to see end grain? Like, what is it going to be? And in the case of a kit set bed, which is just that, it is a bed, it's going to have to be removed at some point. Where's the line drawn as far as when is it okay to have a gap between two pieces of wood that are going to have to come apart at some point?
Yeah, sort of the form over function.
Yeah.
Function over form, yeah.
So one of her complaints was that the handrail at the top of this bed, the rail to stop you falling out of bed, had mitered corners, and it's not a perfect miter. It's just. This is what it is. It's not perfect.
And this isn't painted. This is clear.
It's painted.
Oh.
It's all painted white. All the edges are rounded over, and so it's like, okay, you don't have a perfect miter. Something's obviously not quite square. We are talking about a massive bed here, but
that you fitted into a house, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, but so I could come and screw it together, glue it, bog it, paint it, and it will look perfect. Can do that on site. You will never get it out of the room. Do you want the option of having to take it apart and then sell it to someone else? Or do you just want to take to it with a saw at some point and remove it from the bedroom? Like, it's a very, and of course at this point, I've still not paid. There's no talk of payment. It sounds very dubious about if I'm going to get my full amount of money at this point.
So is this all in the email that she sent you tonight, or is this still the
No,
first?
her email tonight was like 2 lines saying, when are you going to come?
Damn.
So I'm like, my whole point of my response to her was, I'm happy to come and fix up these pieces of paint, fill a screw head. That's fine. I'm going to have to stop at some point because you agreed to the design. Like, if you want me to alter the gap between the stairs and the bed, I can do that. That's a day for me to take the whole thing apart on site, cut pieces down, glue pieces on, repaint it. This is not really a charity thing here. So far her response is just, when are you going to come? So it's not sure how it's going to play out at this point.
Yeah, that's rough.
There's
There's no real way to win here unless she backs down, and she doesn't sound like the type of person who's going to back down.
Yeah, it's just baffling to me that, to be honest, what I think has happened is this bed looked really nice in drawings, and when it's actually in the bedroom, it just feels much bigger than it looked. And you're always going to get that when you're standing in a 3-dimensional space. And I think that there's a perception, or the reality is it hasn't created the extra space in the room that she was hoping for. And while the thing is built nicely and it looks nice, overall, she possibly is just disappointed that it hasn't kind of met what she was wanting. And now she's gone and spent the money on it. And she possibly is just disappointed. Perhaps that's what I'm feeling at this point. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure.
It's so funny. So like, I have this very similar issue with my dearest loving wife, who I cherish. But a lot of the times when I make stuff and I renovate, she looks at it and she'll pick it apart. She's not being nasty. It's just, that's not right. But in my mind, and I think this goes back to what you're saying, Joe, everything is a decision. So in my mind, that was the best decision. I could have done something else, but in that moment, I can't go back and just ask every 5 minutes, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Yeah. And to be fair as well, like, some of these are just, in my opinion, the best decisions.
But that's why I was going to bring up this. I've got a note to say, as makers, are we responsible then to run every kind of crucial, quote unquote, crucial decision by the customer? At what point are we allowed to sit back and say, no, this is my decision of making it this way, and you're just going to have to live with the fact that in this particular circumstance, you're going to have to see a screw head from this angle, because otherwise this thing is not getting into the room. It's got to be in 2 pieces, or whatever it happens to be. At some point, we have to make these decisions. And those are things you can't draw, or if you do draw them on a drawing, you're going to be drawing for a month.
See, it's funny that you bring it up, of that, how, like, does every decision have to go past the client? Because right now, the clients I'm working on, while they are lovely, they are getting a deal which is beyond belief from me, because they've basically got $2,000 worth of wood for free. And I'm making all of these decisions with the build to say that, well, this is to suit your budget, so I'm not going to do this. And yet I find myself there with a syringe with a hypodermic needle on it, injecting resin into cracks on the tabletop, because I can't bring myself away from it. Yet they want this like Z-frame stretcher to be kind of inset into the stretchers, so that it kind of blends into it as a sculptured piece. But I'm not making any money on this table, so why would I put the extra half a day labor into doing something where I can just cut the bevels and screw it on?
Yeah, it was really interesting, because it comes down to price point. Like,
they can expect all they want, but if they're not willing to pay for it, do we still do it?
Yeah, and that's the problem with shops, is that you can walk into a shop and you can see exactly what you're getting, and you can choose to walk away or not. If that customer walks away, the chances are they'll never find something in the shop that they are actually after. Hence, they come to people like us to make them stuff. But then they can't actually articulate what they want. Like, sometimes clients don't care about the details, but sometimes they just focus on this one detail which they happen to have in their head. And if we happen to make that decision the wrong way around and that detail's different, then it's our fault. And
but we turn into the bad guy.
Yeah, but even worse so, then it's like, something I've been trying to grasp as well, is it's like, oh, well, I'm not paying the final amount. It's like, well, hang on a minute. Is this mistake, quote unquote mistake, worth 50% of the job value? Like, of course not. I mean, we're talking about 1 or 2% of the overall job. So if anything, there's a 2% discount. But people don't work that way. So it's
I wonder if as creatives, we will look at that bolt, and that was part of Joey Chalk's decision and like vision. And so we can look at that and go, that in that moment of time is exactly what it should be, and therefore that piece is beautiful in its own right. You can't look at it and say everything's got to be done like a piece of IKEA furniture or a piece of this furniture. It is what it is, and that's why you paid the money for it. But if you don't see it like it's that person's that person's art, or that person's piece, then you're never going to be happy, because you need to be the one who's going to make it, because otherwise you're never going to be happy. It's always going to be someone else's vision.
That's the other thing as well that is very difficult to communicate when you mention IKEA. Like, let's say IKEA, a piece goes through development where it goes through what's the easiest way for us to manufacture. Yeah, okay, we've got that. And then what's the best way to get a perfect finish every time? What kind of details are we happy with? And then everyone knows that, and the process is A, B, C, D. You get something custom made like this loft bed where there's like 100 moving elements, and it's never been made before, and it's R&D on the job as you go. And there's going to be some error. You're not going to build the prototype. Is not going to be perfect. And if I made it again, I would certainly do it differently. But because in the job we're doing, we only really usually get one chance to make anything. So usually every time you cut something, you're like, right, can this be cut? Am I going to make a mistake here? So while what I made is accurate to my drawings, I would make it differently if I did it again, because I've learned a lot about making that particular thing. But the client has got what was drawn and what was agreed on. So, making changes at this point is like a whole different, it's a whole new job.
And Leroy's made, sorry, John, just to interrupt you. Leroy's made a very good point. Most people don't understand the process. And I think that's sort of what you're saying, Joey. The process to get from where you were to there is not yet nutted out. You don't know what it is. So that's where those decisions come up. And people think that in your mind, you've thought of everything start to finish, but it's impossible to have. What were you going to say, John?
I was just going to say, and it can be really disheartening when you've put a lot of your time, effort, and mental strain into a project like this to come up to a solution with their problem, and then they're not happy with it, and they make it seem like you're the bad guy, when it's actually quite a selfless act in making a piece of furniture for someone's house, especially when it's custom to a specific room like that, and they don't really appreciate it. I mean, yeah, if it's not what it is, like if it's not what was decided upon, sure, that's valid reason to be unhappy with it and to talk about it. But still, it doesn't take away from, as the craftsman, to have this kind of deflated feel about it after the fact.
But I think it's worse. It's more difficult in that, because in the case of this bolt, they technically aren't wrong, because you could have done that bolt better. So they're picking up a point that is possibly technically true, but they're missing everything else over that one minor detail. And that's where it becomes deflating, I think.
That's a good point, because like when I was saying about that kind of 2%, like it's a very big job, and this person is essentially nitpicking at about 2% of the overall, and overall is exactly what they wanted. But you send me a picture of a 1 millimeter gap in a mitre, and you're like, okay, sure. I mean, it's all painted. Like, I don't know what to say.
Well, I'm sure we're going to have a very interesting update at next week's podcast, because this is, I can't wait to see how this woman's going to go, because what is your next step? If she says I'm not paying, do you go via the litigation route, or is that just stupid?
Well, if she asks for a discount, I will go talk down the percentage of how much percent of the job is she happy with. For a start, she's paid 50%. That covers all the materials and a tiny little bit of labor. So she owns the materials, and it's currently installed in her house, so she owns it outright. I can't take it away. What's left of that, the other 50% is money in for my business, some of which will go into my pocket. Most of it is probably going to end up as overheads. So, getting a discount, yes, she can have a discount, but it's certainly not 50%. It just doesn't work that way. So, well, I'll find out. I mean, I've had the week to just mull it over, and at this point, I just need to go back, do the touch-ups that I said I was going to, and that's about all I can do. So.
And you've dealt just with her, like she doesn't have a partner or someone who's can.
She has a husband, but I haven't dealt with him.
I guess, yeah.
Has the prospect of her not paying actually been brought up by her?
She just mentioned how expensive it was, and that she expected better.
Because maybe, if to me, I would get to this stage if I was you to be, it's not even worth worrying about anymore. But that's not how you stay afloat as a business. But maybe if you approach them at the stage of saying, look, I'll come do these touch-ups, and to say sorry for the inconvenience, figure out a discount level that you're happy with, and say, how about I come up and fix it up, and then we'll knock 20% off or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't done that kind of thing before.
Yeah, and then you're kind of being the guy that's offering a deal, even though
it just annoys the crap out of me.
Oh, totally.
To offer a discount for something where the things she's not happy with, I mean, the big things are things that we talked about and she agreed to. So it's like read the emails.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Just slap them. Go fix it, slap them on the way out.
Anyway, so we'll see what happens. I'll arrange to go see her next week, I guess. So that's my fun week.
Jeez, between the two of you guys, it's been a bit of a rough week.
Yeah, I don't want to I think I've complained about clients probably more than anyone, and possibly I deal with more turnover of actually dealing with more clients, so that probably makes sense. But I think it just also stands to, if you're going to get into this business, you are going to deal with customers who just are not reasonable sometimes.
And Jordan and I were talking about this last week, actually, about when does this, what you're talking about, become so annoying and frustrating and rage inducing that you just say, owning my own business, it's not worth this. I'm going to go get a desk job.
Still in that mindset this week.
And I think that's why we talked about it last week.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to be mindful of keeping it a little bit more outlook. It doesn't make any sense. I can't even think.
Let's all be Outlook today, guys.
Yeah, let's all look Outlook.
All right.
Okay, we can talk about something for like 5 minutes.
Let's talk. Okay, well, before we talk about anything else, Nick Harvey has had a question on hold for, this is now the third week in a row. And we wanted to get to it last week, but Joey was off, so we couldn't do it. Wanted to get to the week before, and there was no time. So tonight, Nick, we are answering this question regardless of the time that we run into. So there's two parts to this question.
And that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Okay.
All right. So Nick Harvey asks, what hardwood timber would go well as a top with cabinets made from birch ply? More as an aesthetic thing than anything else. It's for a consulting desk. So Joey, I think this question was more directed to you. I'm guessing because of the a lot of the kitchens that you install, you do the ply kitchens.
Oh,
So
right.
what would be a good hardwood timber to go for that for a consulting desk,
Oh, man.
aesthetically?
I don't know. Anything dark, I suppose.
Yeah, because my mind immediately went to like walnut or something.
Yeah, what have I done? I'm thinking maybe something like maybe mahogany colorish, or what else have I done?
Do you
It's got to be just something that contrasts it. You could probably put maple on it as well and have like an it'd be like very like a minimalist look.
would you ever do plywood on top of that?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
in my
it's
mind,
done.
plywood is super trendy. Like
Yeah, it does look very what's the word?
industrial,
Yeah, industrial commercial when you have a all plywood box.
but finished to the T.
Yeah, it can look really nice. I just think anything that's not the same color.
Jordan, what would you use?
I quite like light on light. So I was going to say something more like cedary would be the darkest, but it's quite soft. But that kind of color would be the darkest I'd go. Or, yeah, like a
Vic
lighter.
Ash or something.
Yeah, Vic Ash, like nice, clean Vic Ash. Something like that. But
Yeah, that would be kind of cool.
that's because I like bleached out look. When
Right.
it comes to if you're using birch plywood, use something light on top as well. I don't necessarily like the contrast.
I'm gonna sort of echo what you're saying, but take it to a different angle. I really like white stone on plywood.
Mhm.
So if this is a paid job, what about getting? So here the brand is Caesar Stone, but I'm not sure what is that. Just an epoxy? Like what is that material?
That's a brand name, I think. So I guess it would be just the generic would be a man-made stone.
Yeah, what do they call that? What's a
Well,
man-made stone? Is it epoxy?
It's like rock dust and epoxy.
Yeah, because you get
Caesar
that in
stone
quite
is a brand name though.
yeah, you get that in what you can get quite thin with that, can't you?
It goes up to 30, goes down to I think 15. I think they do it. Down to.
Because I can see that not the one with like you just get the one with just the slight flex in it on a birch base. I think that would look pretty tight.
I thought you would say concrete. Right.
That would actually concrete would work well.
Yeah, it would. All right, so there was a second part to this question, and there was also, please could we ask Joey to expand on the Minwax wipe-on poly, just in regards to the ratios of thinning out on each coat. I'm actually really interested in this as well because I've tried to experiment on this in the past. Do you thin out each coat as
Not
you
the
go?
Minwax stuff. The Minwax stuff is thin like water out of the can, so just out of the can is great.
So you never need a thin wipe-on poly.
Not that stuff. The Minwax stuff I've found fine. Otherwise, I just make my own. I don't see the point in buying someone else's thinned down polyurethane where I can just thin my own polyurethane down. Jordan, I think, has a slightly different view to that, but in my case, I just thin it down and add more coats. If I'm making, you can buy over here. I can buy a 4-liter can of cheap polyurethane for $39 or something, and a $2 bottle of Terps, and mix it up, and you've got wipe-on poly, and you've got the crap ton of it.
The only thing I worry about when doing it like that is control and repeatability. Like,
Yeah, you have to mix it per job.
Yeah, and then if they come back wanting something and it's slightly off and it's slightly different color, then it can come back to bite you.
Well, that's when you have a little disclaimer.
Oh, yes.
You say, I have a disclaimer on quotes when I do official written up quotes that, timber's natural, a natural thing, and it moves and it does this and that. And pigments always change. And so paint colors are never going to be the same. And clear coat formulas change all the time, and the amount of pigments and tannins and rah, you will never get the same color twice unless I do them all at the same time, whatever that is.
So finish with you idiot.
Yeah.
While we're talking, because we're not going to have time tonight to do a topic, while we're talking about finishes, and John, with your spraying knowledge, I am looking to get so I've got an air compressor. I've never touched a spray gun before. Never used one, obviously. I want to spray my back fence with a water-based one of these deck spray finish things.
Right.
Know? Can I do that with a spray gun?
You can. Is it an oil?
Water-based.
But it's like water-based oil? I'm not sure. Anyway.
Aqua enamel.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'll probably be saying get the cheapest piece of crap you can if it's for a fence, because you're not going to want to clean that stuff out of it if it's what I'm thinking it is. 2 millimeter nozzle would be the minimum. 2.5 would be better.
2.5, yep.
But one thing is get yourself on your compressor. So get the gun with 2.5 mil nozzle, but also get yourself a good regulator with filter, dry filter, not oil filter, because cheap ones, they'll do the job, but they're not as good. But the good one, when you set the pressure, it's when you turn the trigger on, you can actually really dial it in. And then when you set the trigger off, you can be sure that next time you trigger on, the pressure is still the same. It doesn't like build up behind the gun.
Okay.
And then when you're setting it up, get whatever you're putting in the gun, the finish in the gun, spray it and turn the pressure from high all the way down to low until it stops atomizing the finish, and turns into this gloopy mess, and then just slightly turn the pressure up, because the lower the pressure, the better yield you'll get out of your finish, because less of it will be overspray and dry before it hits the fence, and you'll get better finish as well.
Geez, this is a bloody science. I'm thinking I'm going to go this route because it's simpler than hand painting.
What size is your compressor?
50 liter.
Do you know what CFM it does?
I do not. I know that it's a Ryobi, and it's a 50 liter, and it's a black.
Some have a weird duty cycle where they don't like running for that long. So like maybe just keep that in the back of your mind. But if you go a HVLP style gun, you can get them cheap. You'll run that at even lower pressure.
That's the other thing. Do I not waste my time with that? Get one of the cheap guns that does everything, and then
you can get an HVLP gun to go on
on your compressor.
But my dad actually bought like a $50 or $60 electric like spray all in one.
I thought that's what the HVLP was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it just means high. What is it?
High volume, low pressure.
High volume. Yeah. So you can get a gun that does that on the compressor, but you can get for like say $50, $60, something like that, a low end HVLP electric sprayer. And my dad actually got one and painted a fence and a roof with. And then if it doesn't work after working for 2 days straight, then you can biff it. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. But that would be the best thing for spraying like fence type stuff, because it's not a very nice, it's not a fine quality spray, but it's perfect for on rough sawn surfaces or even the side of your house would be fine. And it has like a 1 liter pot on it, and it just has a little fan inside it, and it just blows the paint straight out.
I might look into that then. Yeah, because all this stuff, like the last couple of weeks that we've been talking about all this, John, with your spraying lacquer and all that, like I'm listening to you guys and I don't know what you're talking about. It's just gobbledygook. And yeah, as you say, Joey, I just want something to just put the paint on in any capacity. Doesn't need to be anything fancy.
Yeah. And that cheap all-in-one gun sort of thing might be the better way to go if your compressor isn't a very high volume one. You'll find...
I've got a 100 liter compressor, and I think it's 100 liter. And when I sprayed the outside of my workshop, it ran constantly. And it's a big compressor. Right. And it got really hot. So I wonder if, but that's me not knowing anything about air pressure either. But I think your little thing will struggle along a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I did use the Ozito airless spray or whatever it's called before. That was cheap. I painted my roof with it. It
Okay.
worked. I
Yeah,
got
I've seen-
lots of paint in my eye, but it worked.
The other option, Rob, would be to rent an airless outdoor sprayer.
You're renting, yeah.
And just rent an actual proper airless sprayer. We just hook it straight to your big 10-litre bucket of paint, and it just siphons it straight out of the bucket. And then all you have to do is run water through it afterwards and clean it out and send it back, and you're done.
Yeah, that's actually, I hadn't thought about renting. It's a good idea.
And then
Musical.
Cool. All right, so you guys have just opened up a whole bunch of new things that I'm going to have to go research for the help. Cool. All right. So what do we watching? Joey, do you want to hit?
What's it called? Twisted Boards on Twisted Boards on YouTube. The affordable workbench with unaffordable hardware. That's pretty cool. He makes a really nice pine. I guess it's southern yellow pine in the States. Yeah, I like how he used pine just because no one seems to do it. I did it. And yeah, used just the fancy bench crafted hardware and does a really good job. And it's a cool video. So,
And geez, it's a good looking bench, eh? Jeez.
that's nice. Yeah,
Damn.
I haven't seen it yet. I have to do that.
it's pretty cool.
Cool. Is that me? Yeah, it is me. I couldn't remember the order after last week. I was watching Tom Stanton, who was like, he's mostly a 3D printy kind of guy, but he was talking about his CNC router finally after months of dodgy dealings, and it's quite fitting because I have a feeling I'm going to have the same thing on my hands.
That's what I was thinking when I saw that video. I was like, Jordan's feeling something.
Yeah, I had no idea. When I was watching this video, it was in the back of my mind, I thought, great, I've paid for my import. This is going to be smooth sailing. But now all has come to fruition.
All right, and for myself, I watched. I think it's Jimmy DeResta's latest video about the knife making that he did. But in particular, the bit where he etches a little section of it with. Would that be considered electroplating?
I think electrolysis, I think.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it.
It was super simple, which I didn't realize it was.
Salt water and current.
Salt water. I thought because thinking back to the high school days, you need some like, what was it? What was the copper one that we used to use? Copper sulfate or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Like that's what I'm thinking in my mind. I didn't realize you could just use table salt to do it. And the result, in my opinion, was actually pretty specky.
Yeah, it will etch any uncovered surface. So it's a really cool way to, I'm not entirely sure why he laser cut. I guess he had to laser cut through the masking to actually get the stencil of his name.
He talked about this in their podcast. He said that the reason he used the lasers is because then you can get really tight corners on such a small design. Yeah.
Right.
Whereas if you were to use a knife, you might be able to as well, but it would just be a lot easier with that laser.
I like the idea of that. I think he should make a Stanley knife to hold it. That giant razor blade.
What sort of knife is it?
It was a giant razor blade.
A razor blade, okay.
You know, like a classic razor blade with the little notches in the top. But it's as big as your hand. This one.
Cool.
And the thing is, he made it sharp as well. So the video that I'm talking about was he made an actual normal knife. I think that video was. But then you're right. In the video before that he did with the razor.
He did the same thing. Oh, right.
But it was that razor blade, that big razor blade that he made. It was all fun and games. But I must say, then when he sharpened it up to real sharp, I just thought, now this is just dangerous because it's this gigantic razor blade.
It's just a real weapon,
Yeah, but that was pretty cool. Cool. All right, everyone. Well, that's it. I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat. Yeah, no worries, Nick. Thanks very much. We finally got your question. I'm happy to have ticked that off. So, yeah, and I hope that was at least some of the details you were looking for.
I've been waiting 32 weeks to get my question answered. When do we get paid?
Oh,
yeah.
Sounds like
joking. I love it.
Cool. All right, everyone. Well, thanks to everyone in the chat. Thanks very much to everyone listening or watching. Hope you've all enjoyed the episode. Anything more from you guys before we head off?
I'm good.
I'm fine.
All good. All right, cool. Okay, guys. We'll see you again then, same time next Thursday.
Catches.